Gotta be mustard. Good morning, everybody. On a Friday, Fox News Alert now. There is word coming that former National Security Advisor Susan Rice set to testify under oath about allegations of unmasking of names in intel reports. Rice has been under fire for her alleged role in revealing the names of Trump associates caught up in the intel reports during the election. For her part, she said she's done nothing wrong. More on this in a few moments inside of America's Newsroom this morning. Another alert now on a Friday morning. The breaking developments over two of President Trump's top priorities. Number one, the travel ban. Limiting entry to the U.S. from 6 Muslim-majority nations is now in effect. How is that going thus far? Meanwhile, health care reform facing an uncertain fate on Capitol Hill. Senate Republicans working to reach some sort of compromise before they all leave town later today. How is that going, we ask? On a Friday, I'm Bill Hemmer, split broadcast. Final show for this week. I'm Bill Hemmer live in Washington. And Shannon, how you doing? Good morning.
I am doing great as we head into this holiday weekend, live from New York. President Trump applying new pressure to Senate Republicans to get something done on health care. Tweeting this morning, if Republican senators are unable to pass what they are working on now, they should immediately repeal and then replace at a later date. Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price weighed in on this just a short time ago.
So the status quo is unacceptable. The Senate understands that. The president is adamant about making certain that we move forward in a positive way for patients and families and docs to be able to make medical decisions and not Washington, D.C.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts joins us now live from the North Lawn. Good morning, John.
Shannon, good morning to you. This is a big change, what the president's saying this morning compared to what he said during the campaign and earlier this year when he insisted that Obamacare repeal had to be followed either immediately or at least a few days with the replacement bill. This was the formula for the House where they were going to repeal and replace literally simultaneously. But now the president seems to be applying a potentially different formula in the Senate. This really could be a nod to Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who said that he told the president on Wednesday about an idea of splitting the bill in 2 parts. Listen to what he said on Fox and Friends yesterday.
What I've come up with, and I talked to the president yesterday about this, is what about dividing the bill in 2? Do the repeal, which no Democrat will vote for, repeal the taxes, repeal the regulations, and do a fix to Medicaid that helps to pay for everything, reform Medicaid. Take the spending and put it in a bill that the Democrats will vote for. There's about 20 different bills Democrats vote for every year. Stick it on one of those bills, and now you have 2 bills. Boom, you get it done in 5 minutes. And the president seemed open and interested in the idea.
Another senator who's open to the idea, Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, another Republican who's not necessarily seen eye to eye with the president on many issues, but did find common ground with him on this. Listen to what Sasse said a short time ago on Fox and Friends this morning.
If we don't get this resolved by the Monday of the next week, July 10th, if there isn't a combined repeal and replace plan, I'm writing a letter to the president this morning urging him to call on us to separate them. Every Republican in the U.S. Senate, except for one, has already voted for repeal in the past. Let's do that first.
Concern among some people at the White House I talked to today, though, that this new plan of splitting the bill into 2 parts, doing the repeal and then replacement at a future date, may not get them to 50 votes and may, in fact, Shannon, scare off some of the moderates who are already on board.
All right, so on another topic, the president tweeting again this morning, this time about violence in Chicago. What's going on there?
And the level of the murders in Chicago is something that the president has been talking about literally since the day that he got into this race. This morning tweeting, quote, crime and killings in Chicago have reached epidemic proportions, such epidemic proportions, rather, that I am sending in federal help, 1,714 shootings in Chicago this year. What the president is doing is he's sending in 20 federal agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. He's sending them to Chicago to create a Chicago Gun Crime Task Force alongside Chicago Police. It's a joint operation. They will have at their disposal a mobile unit that's quickly capable of quickly processing ballistic evidence and then linking up with the national database to search firearms so that they can try to narrow the time window of the process down and hopefully trace these firearms to the perpetrators and get them arrested. Here's what the Attorney General Jeff Sessions said about this just a short time ago.
it excuse me, will have an impact in reducing shootings in Chicago. But the police have been demoralized in many ways. They're not feeling good. The policies in Chicago have not been working. Murders are way, way too high. Other cities like Chicago are far better off than Chicago. It is critical for the people of Chicago, public safety, that we begin to work together here.
The president has been talking to Chicago's Mayor Rahm Emanuel about this. White House officials say that Emanuel has resisted any notion of federal help, saying that the president needs to end his crackdown on sanctuary cities first. But the president clearly doesn't want to do that. The sanctuary cities bill passed the House yesterday, and of course he's talking about that and now sending in the federal agents. Another little piece of business that we learned about yesterday from the White House, Shannon. The president next week, when he goes to Hamburg for the G20 summit, will have a bilateral meeting of sorts with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Looks like it won't be an official sit-down sort of thing. What's being called a bilateral pull-aside, a little more informal. No agenda set for that. And by the way, the president taking up the fight with MSNBC again today, tweeting just a short time ago. So I'm sure they have more to say on that.
The news keeps you busy there at the White House. All right, John Roberts, thank you very much. Bill?
Get some analysis right now. Thank you, Shannon. Analysis with Chris Starwell, Charlie Hurd here in studio. And gentlemen, good day to you. Charlie has run out of seersucker jackets.
Yes, I had to go with the straight blue.
Well, you look great. Travel ban 2.0. It has worked so far. The redo has been effective.
Yes, and interestingly, it is so much less controversial than anybody expected. Part of the reason that the first go-around was poorly crafted. Version 2.0, much more considerately done. But part of the reason that there was such a freak out the first time, because people couldn't even handle the fact that Donald Trump was president, and this was the first action he took, and it was their heads exploded. Now they're putting in place, and it's NBD.
So let's see how it goes. Now, Charlie, go ahead.
Well, no, but the reason that people freaked out so much is because there was this, obviously there were problems with the particulars of the way it was put in place the first time, but there was also this freak out, this mental freak out, all these people saying the president doesn't have the right to do this.
Right.
And that has been settled by the Supreme Court. That's a huge victory for the president. And so those people have been shut up, which also contributes to the fact that it's
topic number 2 on health care. I don't expect much from the Senate today. John Thune sat in that chair last night and said you may get a little bit more that goes to the CBO to tell us what it will cost, but don't expect major headlines today. Do you have anything different on that?
I don't expect to see major headlines today, but what we're going to look, and you saw with the president basically embracing the Ben Sass plan, where you split the bill, and you do the repeal first and you do the replace later. I would point out that's where we started. That was March. That was Paul Ryan's original idea, and Donald Trump said, no, we can't do that. We have to have full replacement. We can't repeal without a replacement, or we'll never get around to it. So they said, okay, back to the drawing board. They blew everything up. It's been 3 months, and we're back to where we began in March. Lordy day.
Well, do you think Republicans come back from this break and hammer away at health care day after day and week after week? That would make a long, hot summer in order to get it done, because that's what Democrats had to do 8 years ago.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think that that's what they'll do. But the problem, of course, with separating it is politicians don't like to take big risks. And the idea of taking something away that Obamacare gave people and then not replacing it with something terrifies them. But apparently so does replacing it with something that doesn't give them as much. So they're in a tough bind. And again, I've said this 100 times, the fact that they didn't have a plan in place all the times that they've been voting over the years.
They only had 7 years, so you don't want to rush into anything.
Susan Rice is in the news as of last night. She will testify under oath. What is our hunch as to how much she reveals and how far she goes?
So the deal here isn't really the unmasking. It's the leaking of the identities. It would be perfectly normal for a national security advisor to seek the identities of Americans who were swept up as part of surveillance. The issue here is, following the links to the leaks, how did the identities of Michael Flynn and others, how did their names get out into the public? And when they were initially identified as potential targets of this collusion investigation. And that's That's the key. And will she shed light on sort of what the evidence custody chain? Who did she tell, and where did it go from there?
But the unmasking is significant, but obviously it's the dissemination of it, because that was what has been used to hurt people, hurt political opponents, and that has been the sort of the major crime all along. It's not been about Russia so much. It's you actually we believe there are legitimate accusations that you had a president who was whose administration was spying on political opponents and releasing the contents of that spying in order to punish them. That's serious stuff. Susan Rice, from the beginning, has at least publicly sort of said things that are not in. It appears to have said things that weren't true. At first, she said she knew nothing about it, and then she later said, what was it? She said, I leaked nothing to nobody, which is kind of
tricky. Yes, very crafty. Very crafty.
And so, but then again, it appears that we may not know what she says, at least in the short term, because there are reports that this will be.
They'll leak. It'll leak.
Parts of it will. Right.
She'll leak it.
Quickly, Trump Putin will talk in about a week's time or so. I imagine that will be
awkward.
That's
totes
awkward.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We're fighting them essentially. We're fighting a proxy war almost against Russia in Syria now.
Maybe it's a necessary discussion.
This is serious business. This is the most important adversary that the United States has. This is the most significant adversary that the United States has, in a lot, at least from a military point of view, about the threat that Russia represents. And the threat of Russia is just as real as possible. And one of the good things that's come out of this process over the anguishing 6 months is this: everybody agrees. Everybody now agrees with clear eyes. Russia is a bad actor. They tried to hurt us. They tried to interfere with our election. They do no good. And now we can at least agree on that.
It'll be interesting to see how much the media focuses on the important thing, the proxy war in Syria, versus, oh no, he's meeting with a Russian. The Russians are everywhere. And because that freak out, I believe, helps Donald Trump.
Guys, have a great holiday week.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you, Charlie Hurd, Chris Darwell. Right on, guys. Get a hot dog.
Yeah.